Perfect. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Sorry about that, I was on mute. Today, we're going to talk about how to compete with larger organizations in your community. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the competition. So establishing who the competition is. Let me make this bigger for you guys. So, a lot of times as nonprofits, a lot of the relationships that we build are going to be relationships that build partnerships. So a lot of times when you think about larger organizations or you think about other organizations in your community, you're thinking about the potential partnerships. But you also have to keep in mind that whether the organization is large or small, you guys are also competing for resources. So what I mean by that is if you are, other people coming in, admit, okay. If you are competing for resources, for example, if you might be applying for the same grant funding, if you might be reaching out to the same communities to ask for donations, any type of competition for the limited amount of funding that is available is a competitor. And oftentimes what happens is smaller organizations, most of you here, since you're a nonprofit for newbies, are typically going to be smaller organizations, or we do have some people who are administrators of large organizations and you're just coming and you have no idea how this works. But for the most part, everyone here is wanting to start a nonprofit. So you're competing with large organizations. They have extremely large budgets, which means they have a lot of money for marketing. They might have already established relationships in the community with like your major grocery stores, your DoorDash, whatever DoorDash company, relationship they may have built, any corporate sponsorships. They may have already reached out to a lot of the same resources that you're looking to reach out to. So that's why they're competition with you. The number one thing that you always want to consider as well is that even within competition, and if you're in the Zoom meeting, just know that I cannot see the chat box while I'm sharing my screen. So we will go over this again in the workshop, but right now we're just giving you the informational point of it. So with the larger organizations, you're going to be competing for resources and you need to be able to beat out the competition. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. As always, we're going to go over our core four. So number one, is your foundation strong? What's your unique selling proposition? Is your program structured and are you measuring outcomes? So today we're going to be really up in this upper right-hand corner, your unique selling proposition. Did you ask the community what they need? Have you connected with potential partners? What makes you different than competitors and what data supports the need for your program? So we're not talking too much about partnerships right now. We will go into partnerships when we do the workshops in the academy, but right now we are solely focused on your competitive advantage, okay? Okay, so our hack for today is being unique and your competitive advantage. So I did take notes. I'm going to put myself on mute so I can take my notes out. That way we stay on track, we stay on task, and we stay organized. Give me 1 second. Okay, so the biggest thing about being a consultant, the most difficult thing I would say is a lot of times we have the knowledge in our head of what we are expecting you to do, but it's very difficult to communicate that information without having a formula. So what I do is every time I teach something, I try to put together a formula that makes it more step-by-step for our newbies to easier for our newbies to understand. So step-by-step instructions for our newbies to understand is what I try to do when I instruct you on how to, for example, find your competitive advantage and take advantage of that. So the first thing I want you to think about is learn what your competition is doing and offer something different. So I'm going to tell you exactly how to do that today. And what you're also going to want to do is take notes and then implement what I'm telling you to do, because you're going to have a long to-do list by the time we get done with this call. Implement these instructions. And then when we have our Sunday workshop for our Academy members, I want you to come in with at least a strategic plan for how you're going to do your competitive analysis, okay? This is a must. So a lot of times we like to skip these steps and go straight to funding. Again, our core four. You have to have these 4 core instructions in place in order to achieve sustainability and in order to achieve real funding. When I say real funding, I mean over $25,000 in funding when you're applying for grants and sponsorships and you're asking the community. We need to have these 4 in place. So even though it seems like, oh, I just don't feel like doing this, or this is just too much, this is extra, it's not, it's really necessary. Okay. All right, so being unique. So what we're going to talk about today is finding the gaps and offering a unique program that increases the likelihood of being approved. So like we said earlier, oh my goodness, sorry, there's like this hair just trying to, okay. What we said earlier was that, there is limited funding available to nonprofits. We talked about it last week. That's probably the thing that you hear the most is people are like, I need funding, I need funding, I need funding. I'm not being approved for the grants that I'm applying for. There's larger organizations already doing what I'm doing. And so I'm struggling to get support. And this is how we're going to solve that today. So last week we talked about a needs assessment. So we're going to talk about a needs assessment in a little bit more detail. And then we're going to talk about how you can use this data and make it quantifiable, which means you can put it into numbers. Okay. So an example of that might be in an interview with 100 domestic violence survivors in the county of Baltimore, 70% advised that their mental health needs were not addressed when receiving supportive services. So I need you to have a statement like that supports your program. So if your program is mental health, is supporting the mental health of domestic violence victims, that's the type of statements that I need you to have. And if you don't have a statement like that, a quantifiable statement about what the need is for your community, then you definitely need to keep listening. Number 1, what I want you to do is establish your target demographic. So I need you to know the age, the gender, the marital status, religion, location, what industry do they work in, their level of education, how much they earn per year, and what their annual household income is, and then what challenges they're facing. So, everything doesn't have to be specific. You don't necessarily only have to serve a specific religion, but if you do, what is that religion? If you only serve a specific gender, what is that gender? So we need to establish that first and foremost. It's impossible to do a needs assessment if you don't specifically know who you serve, okay? It doesn't have to be a particular race, but some organizations do only serve minorities. So you need to know exactly who you're serving. And then again, what needs does your organization choose to address? So you've established what the needs are, and now you need to figure out what needs your organization will address. Okay, so what I want you to do first is I want you to write this down, name 5 organizations in a different community that address a similar need. So what I mean by that is if you serve the youth and you offer a mentorship program, find 5 other organizations in a different community that address that same need. Then you need to reach out to those organizations. This is a big part of about being a leader and building relationships in your community and the community surrounding yours. Reach out to these organizations, introduce yourself, and then really talk about with the person who is in charge. Usually that's going to be, the executive director or one of the program directors. Learn what resources and strategies work for them. And a lot of times I will hear people say, okay, well, I tried to reach out and they didn't return my calls, or they don't really want to talk to me. They don't want to share information with me. If you can't get in touch with them, then you need to put the next foot forward and find out what their next event is. If you attend an event and you support that organization, you listen to their speech, you find out more about what they do, then you might have some time after. Usually there might be, like a Q&A where you can say, hi, this is my organization. This is what we intend to offer. Can you share a little bit about what you may have learned and how we can improve on our services in this separate county that you don't currently serve? So that might be a good way to get in touch with them, is attending their events. And then also volunteering. So if you have time, I strongly recommend that you volunteer with other organizations that are in your, that are close enough for you to travel to and help out with. This is especially helpful if you're still in the idea phase. So especially if you haven't filed your paperwork yet and you're just like really listening in, you're looking in the Facebook group, you're seeing what we've been talking about, you're taking notes, but you really haven't taken action. One thing that you can do is volunteer for an organization that addresses a similar need to the one you want to address, okay? You will learn a lot that way, and it will also allow you to avoid a lot of the troubles that you may have experienced if you would have just started out with no recipe for success, okay? Number two, what I want you to do is now, after you've completed that, so again, I just want you to take notes right now and then create a plan. So your plan is naming the 5 organizations and then how you're going to introduce your organization, what your elevator pitch is, what questions you're going to ask them. You might not be able to do it right away, but I want you to have a plan in place for when we meet on Sunday. You know exactly what you have to do and what you have to take action on. Then we can go further into detail and figure out, we can work together to talk about how to introduce your organization, what exactly to say. We can provide you with a list of questions that you might want to ask. So we'll go over that in further detail during the workshop on Sunday in the Academy. Number 2, name your 3 stakeholders. So stakeholders don't always have to be other organizations, but they are anyone who has influence in the community for your target demographic. So this is specifically for your community. This is not for the outside communities. You want to figure out who has expertise in studying the need that your demographic is facing. So for example, if you serve veterans, you might list some key staff members in the local the VA Health Center, and then other places that veterans typically gather. Those might be people who are stakeholders in the community and have a lot more experience working with veterans. A lot of veterans, they might go in for one specific need, but when they're talking to that staff member, they're like, man, I really wish I had somewhere where I could go and get food on Tuesdays, or, I work during business hours and I can never find anywhere to get food on the weekend, or I can never find anywhere to spend time with other veterans. So talking to, I'm sorry, I'm still a little sick. I thought I was better, but every time I get on a call, it's like, I start to feel it again, trying to get it out. So just bear with me. As we are, speaking to these key stakeholders in the community, then you will find out more about, what their needs are and how you can address those unmet needs. That means that even if there is a large organization who is serving veterans, they're not meeting that need. So you definitely want to start asking around. And so you're going to find out more about the gaps that they see. And then you're going to figure out how you can help, okay? So three key stakeholders, that we said 3? Yep, 3 key stakeholders. It could be a staff member at a particular agency that you want to build a relationship with. You also want to talk to your board members and your friends and your colleagues and your family members. Hey, do you know anyone who can put me in touch with this person? Start to spread your network. The more you spread your network, the more you are moving into your purpose and your leadership role as a nonprofit founder and CEO, okay? Number 4, name 10 people who fit into your original target demographic. So anyone who fits into the target demographic that you put forth in the very beginning, the first thing I told you to do, I need you to name 10 of those people. Write down a list of 10 people you know. If you don't know 10 people, then you definitely need to know 10 people who are in need of your services. So you need to go do your research, ask again, your friends, your colleagues, coworkers, family members, anyone, board members, anyone who you can about, hey, do you know anyone who might need this service? Can you send me, can you connect me with them? Not just send me their phone number, but can you connect me with them? Can you put me on a phone call with them? So again, in the Academy, we'll talk about more about how to introduce yourself to people in your target demographic and ask questions without making them feel uncomfortable. But today, I just want you to name 10 people, okay? Find out what they believe is needed, but not readily available. So if they feel like it's needed and it's not being offered, that means that you're going to be beating out the competition, the larger organizations for funding, because you're offering something that is not currently present, okay? A good way to do this, there are different ways depending on who you're serving. So interviews, focus groups, surveys, listening sessions, public forums. If you don't have a public forum, if you can't find a public forum that has your target demographic in it, if you have some extra time, you can create a public forum. And what I mean by that is, like, for example, a Facebook group. Okay, so I know about Facebook groups. I don't know about the other forums, but I know there's like Reddit forums or like all types of different. If you Google, you'll see different forums where people are asking questions and sharing information. So you can create a forum or you can find a forum. If you create a forum, now you have a place where you're already building a community of the people that you serve, and you can actually ask questions within that community. Okay, so that's like a double whammy there. Again, volunteering, casual conversations in spaces where your target demographic would normally meet. That's why it's important, again, to be able to define your target audience, answer those questions that I gave you earlier in the presentation, because then you will be able to figure out, okay, where are they typically meeting? If your target demographic is someone who makes $60,000 a year, but they work full time, then you're probably not going to find a meeting place for them during the weekday. Unless it's at, if you're serving a community and there's schools that you're looking for, you're going to help teachers, then you might find a lunch space that the majority of the teachers might meet at during the hours of 11 and 12 noon. So really getting familiar with who you're helping, and then really stepping into that leadership role of reaching out to them and finding out what their needs are. Again, casual conversation, volunteering, interviews, focus groups, surveys, listening sessions, and public forums are all great ways to do that. And then finally, you can just use existing data as well. So typically, the first 3 tips that I gave you are going to be something that, larger organizations aren't really doing. They're not really reaching out, building relationships in the community on a smaller level and getting people to trust them. They're just using their name and their branding to create awareness. So if you start building personal relationships with the people in your community, explaining what your organization does, we have a pitch deck presentation in the Academy, so that will help you with your elevator pitch, the who, what, why, where, and when summary of your organization, to where you can explain it. Getting on an elevator and getting off, your whole explanation should be complete during that time. So we have a pitch deck presentation that helps you with that. Presenting that information to people in your community is what sets your organization apart from the competition. And then what happens is the larger organizations are typically going to use the existing data. So you don't want to exclude that. You should still look at the US Census, which is all, Google. You can use Google for this. US Census, public health data, and then the local library will also have some resources to find data as well. Okay, so in summary, I want you to do those 3 tips that I gave you. So let's go back. Establish your target demographic. Number 2, name 5 organizations in a different community that address a similar need and reach out to them. Number 3, name 3 stakeholders in your community, within the community that you're currently serving, that has influence, and find out what they think the needs are for the community. And then number 4, I want you to name 10 people who fit into the target demographic that you want to serve. And number 5, check out existing data on Google and in your local library. So if you're currently, again, if you don't have something that says statistically, for example, in an interview with 100 domestic violence survivors in the county of Baltimore, 70% advised that their mental health needs were not addressed when receiving supportive services, then you need this training and you need to do exactly what I said, because it will certainly help you when it comes to funding. These statistics should be on your website. When you're asking other people for money, and when your board is asking other people for money, they need to be able to give a reason why your organization is so important. So when you explain to someone, listen, 70% of the people who were survivors, this person might say, oh, I already support a domestic violence organization, domestic violence survivor advocacy organization. I already support someone who does that. I don't think that my money needs to go towards your organization. You're new, get on your feet, figure it out first. If you're able to say, hey, it's great that you do that, but we also found out that 70% of the people who were currently being assisted felt like their mental health needs weren't being addressed. Do you think mental health is important? This is why mental health is important. If you know your facts, then you're able to get more support, not only with grantors, but also in your community. And then also, when you're trying to get your board members to talk about why your organization should be supported, you have to give them something to work with. So that's why it's so important that because you're a smaller organization, because you have to put more legwork in, just follow the steps that I gave you, start building relationships in your community and asking these questions, okay? And even if you're already established, you still can do this and you still can reevaluate what programs you're offering, especially the ones that you're having trouble getting funded, okay? You need to, after you do your needs assessment, I want you to, again, look and see what are the existing needs. How can your organization fulfill at least one of the existing needs? And then what quantifiable and what qualitative proof do you have that this need exists? So qualitative is not, it's not going to be numeric. So it could even be, if you have someone who's comfortable doing an interview and sharing the experience that they had and why that need is unmet, that would be qualitative. That's something that you could add to your website, or that's a story that you could tell on your social media or tell when you're asking someone to donate, okay? So that's what I want you to work on. And then as far as you figuring out what your current programs are and how you can change them, if you notice that your programs aren't much different than what's already being offered, then I need you to put a twist. So it doesn't mean that you have to, completely cancel your program or completely, most of us, we have a purpose and we already know what that purpose is. For example, we might already know that we want to serve young children or youth and we want to offer an after school activity. So what I'm saying is I'm not telling you can't offer an after school activity, but if you notice that, and you want to serve low income students, if you notice that most of the programs focus on STEM, then you might want to look at something for the creative students who, are like, okay, well, I learned enough at school, so I don't want to go to this after school program. Maybe the goal isn't about education. Maybe the goal is giving them an additional support system when parents are still at work between the hours that they get out of school at 2:30 and then when the parent gets home at 6 o'clock. So if the goal is to fit that need, if that's your mission, is to fulfill that need for parents and be a support system to students so that they're not in the streets getting into trouble, then what does it matter what service you provide? The only thing that matters is that you're meeting your mission and that you are doing something that is unique. So you might look and say, okay, what we should offer is an art program, a sculpturing program, a painting program, music program. So other advantages, if the current organization isn't offering transportation, you can offer transportation. If you're an after school program and you notice that the kids are hungry until 6 o'clock or all they get is a snack, you can provide a meal. That's what makes you different. A cost advantage, if it costs $50 a month for a student to join that other program, it might cost $25 to join your program. Or at the very least, not even at the least, because it's very important, serving a city or county that others are reluctant to. So if there's cities or counties or certain schools that aren't being addressed that people are like, I'm not going to help that one. I don't have time for that. You know, we can't get in touch with the professors. The professors aren't on board with helping the kids. So why should we go into that community and get involved? You know, like Soccer Shots. Soccer Shots, if you look, they're not a nonprofit, but this is just an example of, if you're a soccer program, you might be competing with Soccer Shots, even if you're a nonprofit. I don't think they're a nonprofit. So, you know, they're usually going to go to the larger schools and the larger daycares and offer the service. The ones whose professors are like, yes, this is what we're focusing on, you know, but the smaller schools who are trying to get their ratings up, they're not worried about Soccer Shots right now. So you need to go, you might be able to go in there and propose the idea of your soccer program for after school students, why it's so important. Again, you know, filling that gap between when parents get off of work, when children get off of school and when parents get off of work, and giving the students something creative to do. So whatever your program is, in any industry, you can still use the same formula, find the missing gaps and make them into opportunities, okay? So that is pretty much what I want to tell you for today. Again, we will go into more detail about this during the workshop on Sunday in the Academy. If you're not a member already, you know, you definitely need to become a member. What's included, you get the free funding development kickoff call, which is you meeting with our grant writing coach who has raised over 3.4 million just in the past year. She gives you a free funding development call to plan out you know, what your strategy for funding should be for this coming year. Access to our private community. So it's like Facebook, our Facebook group, but it's a private community. So we always answer the question. So a lot of times with the Facebook group, it gets hard for us to continue to, you know, answer every single question that's asked in the Facebook group. And I used to do it religiously, like every single question that was asked in the Facebook group, I would like sit there and answer every single one. But now that I'm, you know, consulting full time and I have a lot of open office hours, I don't spend as much time in the Facebook group. You know, I try to focus on the private community because I know that these are the people who, when they ask the question, they're actually going to listen for the answer. They're not going to go about their day and forget that I even spent 15 to 20 minutes researching and looking for the answer. So I focus on the Academy more when it comes to private questions. We also have a fundraising coach, a grant writing coach, an accounting coach, board development coach, and all of us work together to answer questions. We have weekly live workshops. So obviously I include this free training, which leads into our weekly live workshop that we have every Sunday that goes into greater detail. So for example, we start with mission statement and we go all the way through the grant readiness checklist and our core 4, all the way into grant writing, and then building a sustainable organization. So that's our live workshops. It's a year-long program for grant readiness. We have our resource vault, which is, you know, researching all the information for your specific industry. We have pretty much a big vault that has all types of PDF documents that you can use if it's fundraising for your board. We have a whole folder that has to do with resources that will help you encourage your board to fundraise or whatever it might be. We have a course vault. So all the courses, and I notice a lot of you guys buy courses, which I love. You know, I appreciate that you trust us to push your organization forward. But, you know, it would be a lot more affordable actually for you to join the Academy and take advantage of the courses for free, in addition to everything else we have already. And then the one-on-one open office hours. Finally, that's everything that we do for our fundraising, grant writing, board development, again, accounting. All of those coaches have free open office hours. We pay them to speak to you, so there's no upsell. You just get to, if you have a burning accounting question, you just join the accounting open office hours when they open, and you ask that question. If it's a nonprofit startup question, you schedule an open office hours with me, and we just get the question answered, you know, because usually it's difficult trying to get in contact with, you know, someone who is a grant writer and try to ask them a question. You're like, I don't need a service. I just need you to answer this question for me. Or if it's fundraising or accounting, the same thing. That's why we did this. So obviously I really take pride in the Academy. So that's why I try to get as many people as possible to join, because the more people, the more resources, the more people that we have engaging with each other, the more people, the less work I have to do in the Facebook community trying to get people to follow along with the step-by-step. Like probably 90% of the questions are asked that have been asked this month in the Facebook group, we've already answered in the workshops. So in the courses vault. So that's why I typically put the Academy together and then refer people to the Academy, because it's all there and it's extremely affordable. So the price is $450 for the year. But what we do is we make it into a monthly payment of $38 a month. So you come in, you join the live workshops, you participate. If you miss a workshop, there's Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you miss it, then you just watch the replay, you do the homework, and you get ready for the Thursday training and then the Sunday training again, okay? And we just keep going back and forth every week until we get you all the way up until you're receiving your first few grants. So if you were informed, if you were well educated by this training, this free training, please believe that you will have 110% more value when you join the Academy. And I am excited to see you guys there. So anyone who's in the Academy currently, and you're in the Zoom call watching this, if you have any questions, just post it in the Academy based on what we talked about today. And I'm going to put this replay in the courses section by the end of the day. Let's say Thursday. So I'll try to do it by the end of the day today. I'll post the replay for you guys. All right, so that's it for today. If you have any questions, again, if you're not in the Academy, reach out to me via Facebook. My name is Gigi Law on Facebook and the Nonprofit for Newbies Facebook group. Send me a message if you have any questions about the Academy and whether or not it's right for you, okay? All right, you guys have a great evening and you take care.